Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, The Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Again, it's Brian O'Neill, the substitute host on The Newsmaker Show. Glad to have Hornell GOP leader John Buckley on today. John, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
I wanted to talk national, state, and local issues, starting off with national. John Buckley, on the subject of immigration, Lou Dobbs said this on the Jim Bohannon America in the Morning show about illegal immigrants in the United States.
36,000 illegal immigrants convicted of everything from murder to sex crimes to you name it, released in society by Homeland Security at their order, and hardly a notice taken in the national liberal media. What is happening to this country is absolutely stupefying when you try to rationalize what one of our law enforcement officers has to face every day in just trying to do his or her job.
And the Judge Napolitano, pretty much on the same page as Dobbs. This is what Napolitano said about President Obama and the illegal children coming in.
When he said to illegal immigrants, if you do the following things, and he ticked off 13 different things, I will not let the government deport you. He made up those 13 events that they could do to avoid deportation. When he sent that signal to presently residing in the United States of America illegal immigrants, he also sent a signal to people in South and Central America. Send your children here, and they won't get deported. And then you'll have an excuse to come here to be with your children, and you won't get deported.
John Buckley, do you agree with the judge and Dobbs?
Yeah, I think they're both right. And, really, going back to, multiple administrations, Republican or Democrat, there's really been a failure to shore up the borders. One of the byproducts, Brian, that's not really being discussed, the porous borders that we have with Mexico is, not only are we looking the other way and letting people flood across the borders, but it's exacerbating the drug problem. And, drugs are just flowing into this country over the southern border like never before. And, like I said, it hasn't been, not really being discussed or covered a lot. Obviously, there's been some coverage, in Fox News and some of the talk shows, radio AM talk.
Lou Dobbs sort of hinted at some sort of cartel bribery situation going on at the border, Mexico-U.S. border. He didn't really point fingers at the U.S., but it was left up to your imagination which side's taking the bribes, how many cartels, what's going on there.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard little snippets here and there about that. But it doesn't do it. A lot of the people that are coming across the border, they're stuck in these encampments. You've probably seen the reports where we have all these children, these young Mexican children that are basically being warehoused in some of these border states. It's just it's atrocious. I feel horrible for those kids. But, what choice do they really have?
John, one of the latest big stories on immigration comes out of a Fox News station in Boston, Massachusetts.
First of all, we ought to be concerned about the crisis at the border because that's a huge problem, and it's obviously distracting these agencies from their regular mission, and especially ICE's mission, which is now focused primarily on removing people who are here illegally who have been convicted of crimes or who have come repeatedly over and over again. And so we know that their caseload is primarily people with criminal convictions.
And that's really a shame because they're doing the country a disservice. In many cases, the people that are coming across the border, they're doing them a disservice. And if you can't secure the border, if you can't control your own borders, then it's just a sad commentary on what's supposed to be the greatest country on the earth.
Moving on to another national topic, the upcoming elections in November. Dinesh D'Souza, the documentary maker and author and professor, he gave an interesting interview to thedailycaller.com. and made a good point about conservatives and their struggle to win.
The conservatives tend to huddle politically. How do we take back the Senate? Meanwhile, here's the left making the long march through the institutions, education, the media, Hollywood, one after the other. And so we don't even have a view of the whole battlefield. We're fighting in one corner of the battlefield. They're moving the goalposts of American politics. So part of what I try to do in this book, America, in the film, is I step back and I say, look, let's have a sense, these Alinskyite termites, if you will, they're not just in your living room, they're throughout the house, eating away at the foundations.
John Buckley, your thoughts on what D'Souza said there?
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, Brian. There really is. If you look at the judges, whether it's on the state level or the federal level, you have Democratic governors and obviously a Democratic president right now, and they stock the benches. And a lot of times when there's an election, the judges really get overlooked, but they're very important, especially in this day and age when judicial activism is at an all-time high. You have judges basically legislating from the bench, and I think that he's touching base on that to some extent, but he's right as far as institutions, whether it's IRS or EPA or any of these other departments in the federal government. You stockpile them with leftists, that have an ideology, and in the meantime, I think he's probably right in the sense where sometimes the Republican Party is guilty of not looking at the big picture, only looking at the here and now. How can we win this election? How can we pick up a couple House seats? How can we pick up a couple of Senate seats? So, I think the Republican brand or the Republican Party or the brain trust, I think we really need to kind of, get that full picture and come up with a long-term strategy and not just look at it election to election.
Congressman Tom Reed, and we're moving on to Iraq now. Congressman Tom Reed said on Monday morning during the weekly press call he wanted no troops on the ground in Iraq, but the president announced on Monday in a letter to Congress that he is sending troops to Iraq. John Buckley, your thoughts there?
Yeah, Iraq has just deteriorated. Al-Qaeda is on the rise once again. They're taking town after town, city after city. And, for what? We had troops there. We lost a lot of American blood. A lot of American riches were spent on Iraq. And what did we really gain out of it? Well, the answer is nothing. So, it's kind of a role reversal in a sense, because now you have Republicans, such as Congressman Tom Reed, who's doing a fabulous job, I might add, saying, let's not send any more American boys over there. Let's not send any more troops over there. Keep them here. Keep them where they're needed. And you have President Obama, who basically, because of his failure in foreign policy, Iraq is just imploding, and he's trying to save face by sending troops over there, hoping that they'll calm things down. I don't think it will. I don't think it will calm things down, especially in the long term. It'll just keep worsening. Afghanistan is another one where you have the Taliban once again on the rise. So, here's my take on the whole thing. You're never going to change the way people think in Iraq or Afghanistan. Nation building doesn't work.
Every weekday on the Sean Hannity Show, in the second hour of the show, Hannity interviews Washington reporter Jamie Dupree. Here's Hannity talking with Jamie Dupree about Iraq and the Iranian assistance there.
Iran is sending troops into Iraq to fight against the Sunni Islamic terrorist group ISIS.
Which obviously they're not thrilled with, too. I think most people probably don't realize that they are not on the same page as this group.
Right. So as a result of pulling out early, the United States could be put in a position of helping the Iranians, which, by the way, I don't think their intentions are pure here either.
Oh, listen, I mean, in the whole scheme of things here, is there a good answer for the administration and whether you bring Iran in some way to help Iraq? For a lot of people, that's not the answer either. So,
John, what Jamie Dupree is saying there is that the Iranian leaders, he's kind of hinting at it, that a lot of people believe the Iranian leaders are bad news, but better to get Iran involved than not. Your thoughts there, John Buckley. Does Iran have to be pure for the U.S. to, well, sort of use Iran here?
Well, I wouldn't trust Iran as far as I could throw them, Brian. I wouldn't trust them on anything. If they said it was night, I would just assume it was daytime. So, trusting Iran, that's just a mistake on our part.
Moving on to the investigation into the IRS, which Congressman Tom Reed's been all over. The IRS says, the most recent news here, they cannot find the Lois Lerner emails from before 2011. This is Jamie Dupree with Sean Hannity on the IRS emails.
So how is it possible in this day and age to lose emails if it's impossible?
This one, it was funny today in the Capitol. You just bring this story up amongst my colleagues in the press gallery, and people couldn't help but just sort of raising their hands skyward and saying, really? You're going to lose a couple years of emails and there's absolutely no record of it?
Jamie Dupree there. This is what Limbaugh said.
There is no way those emails are gone. There's no way a hard drive crash at the IRS or DOJ, a single crash has resulted in those emails being lost. There are backups every which way from Sunday. This is some document dump late Friday afternoon, and it's a stalling technique. It's embarrassing. You try it. Next time you get audited with the IRS and they want you to produce I don't have them. My hard drive crashed. See how far it gets you.
John Buckley, valid point there from Rush. Is the IRS just stalling Congress, saying that the computer crashed? Sorry, no Lois Lerner emails.
It does sound pretty silly that someone would lose an email or emails in this case, in this day and age. All you have to do is look in your deleted folder or or type it in your search box on your email account, and voila, there it is. So it does sound like it sounds pretty silly. It sounds as if they're stalling. That whole thing is just a mess. And it's stories like that really that turn people off to politics. And that's why people get so frustrated.
We're talking with Hornell Republican leader John Buckley on the Newsmaker Show on AM 1480 WLEA. In just a moment, we'll be back. We'll talk state and local. Stay with us. On the Newsmaker Show, Brian O'Neill in for Kevin Dorn again on Today with John Buckley. John, on state issues, a new poll out this week shows that Common Core is not popular. 82% of those polled said they felt Common Core's implementation was rushed. Your take on those poll numbers, John?
Yeah, I think they're accurate. I've heard a lot of comparisons with Common Core to Obamacare, just the way it was rolled out and the rush that it was rolled out in. A lot of the components not even complete as they were being rolled out. So I've heard that from a lot of teachers. Talking to a lot of parents, there's a lot of frustration because they don't understand it. And when little Mikey or Susie comes home with their homework, the parents are unable to really help them with the homework because they just don't get it. I actually attended a workshop at the high school. They had a Common Core math workshop earlier in the year, and I attended it because I wanted to experience it for myself. They had different classroom settings, and you'd go from one to the other, and at the end you kind of got a working knowledge of what the kids were actually going through, and I'm talking about second and third grade and the younger kids. And it is frustrating. I'll say, and I'll be fair. I'm a Common Core critic, but I'll be fair. There were some aspects of it that made sense, but I felt a lot of it was very convoluted and unnecessary. Especially when you're talking about math, they're trying to basically reinvent the wheel when it doesn't really need to be. So I can understand those polls, and I think they're accurate.
That same Siena College poll showed that Republican Rob Astorino was behind Governor Cuomo by 30 points. Here's some audio soundbite here of pollster Steve Greenberg on the Fred Dicker Show from yesterday talking about the upstate, downstate voters' feelings on the governor's race right now.
Rob Astorino has a much bigger opportunity because he's unknown, because Andrew Cuomo is more known. If Astorino has enough money to run enough ads upstate, he has far more opportunity to pick up that undecided
Obviously
voter.
a big if, and because Astorino is so little known, as we both understand this, the governor, with all the money he has, is probably going to move and has already begun to move expeditiously to define him, quote unquote, in his harsh and negative light, the extreme conservative label that he's trying to stick on him with the money that he can use to buy those TV ads. He's got it.
John Buckley.
Yeah, well, the problem with Astorino all along, and, we said this back when Donald Trump was considering running, is that Astorino has, number one, no name ID, and number two, he doesn't have the money. And we're starting to see that really, come back to bite him. You could make the argument that because he has no name ID, that's a benefit to him. I don't think that it is. I think name ID always helps candidate. Obviously, money, if he's only got, a couple million in the bank, and Andrew Cuomo's sitting on $33 million, we know where that's headed. Actually, Governor Cuomo's already running ads on TV, touting his record and this and that. So, that's already begun. And Cuomo will define who Astorino is. And, I think he's already started to do that, even though, I don't agree with it, and I don't think it's true, but, that's how the game's played. And the game is played, especially, national and on the state level, it's played with money. And, that's the truth. It's unfortunate. I think Astorino is right on the issues. I like his ideas. I think he would be an outstanding governor, but he doesn't have the money and he doesn't have the name ID, and he's going to have a hard time pulling it off. Now, having said that, Andrew Cuomo has really ticked off a lot of people. Whether it's the SAFE Act and the Second Amendment people, that crowd. He's been talking about the DREAM Act that hasn't gone anywhere yet. He's talked about numerous issues. The Women's Equality Act, which would make New York State the abortion capital of the country, which it may be already, but it would even make it worse. So there's a bunch of things, and if Astorino has one hope, it's that he goes after all these different crowds and tries to unite them and get them to the polls in November. That would be his one saving grace. But it's an uphill battle, especially when you have limited funding and you're up against an Andrew Cuomo type.
Moving on to local issues, the Hornell movie theater, a possible buyer there.
Yeah, there is someone interested in purchasing the movie theater. I can't say who it is just yet. Mayor Hogan's been in discussions with the person. And, as you know, the movie theater closed down a while back and, was tied up in the banks and this and that. But there is someone interested. And, from what I understand, if the deal does happen, and I've got my fingers crossed that it will, that the potential buyer would come in and revamp the whole thing, bring in the new digital technology and do a lot of different things, even above and beyond just movies. So I'm hearing a lot of good things. We're keeping our fingers crossed that it'll happen. I got a good feeling that it's going to happen. It'll take a little time, but I think we need that movie theater here. It can be successful if it's run by the right person, and I think we may have found them.
The Lincoln School Apartments, John.
Yeah, Edgemere Development, they've applied for a couple of rounds of funding and come up short, in having a meeting with the mayor just recently. Edgemere plans to move ahead and reapply the third time. We're hoping the third time will be the charm. And, for those people who are familiar with the Lincoln School, St. James owns it, and they pulled out. They closed up their offices there. So it's basically just been sitting there. And Edgemere Development wants to come in and turn it into the Lincoln Gardens, which would house approximately 23 apartments for seniors 55 and older. So that would be a great boost to the city, a great boost to the Ninth Ward. It would revitalize that area of the city. And, just keep my fingers crossed. Hopefully this round of funding will, come out in their favor.
Some bridge work going on in the Ninth Ward?
it seems like there's always bridge work in the Ninth Ward. We've got 3 bridges that go over Crosby Creek. We just replaced the Grand Street Bridge a while back, but the other 2 on South Division Street and on Canisteel Street, we're having some issues with those. I know we're going to do some deck work here shortly on the South Division Street Bridge, so we're looking forward to that, getting that shored up, and hopefully, if we can, get the funding, we'll get the Canisteel Street Bridge replaced, and sometime in the future, just to give people a little perspective, it took nearly a decade to get the funding for the Grand Street Bridge. Hopefully it won't take that long for the Canisteel Street Bridge, but it does take time. Each bridge costs $1 million plus to replace, but we are working diligently trying to secure that funding, trying to get everyone on board so we can have some new bridges over that way.
And final question for you, Hornell, Republican leader and 9th Ward Alderman John Buckley. Democrat Bob Murray leaving his alderman post to move to Canandaigua. That story was in the Tribune, the Spectator on Sunday. Anything you wanted to say there?
The 1st Ward alderman, and Bob and I came onto the council at the same time. We were both elected in 2009. We were sworn in together. He's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, but I can honestly say Bob, man, one of the best guys I've ever met on the council. He was a friend. He was an ally. We worked together on numerous committees. We worked together on numerous projects, and I'm really going to miss Bob. And he did a good job in the 1st Ward, and not only will I miss him, but a lot of other folks will miss him too. But I wish him and his wife well. They're moving to Canandaigua, and they're both retired, and they've got a lot that they want to do.
Hornell Republican leader John Buckley, always great having you on.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Alderman John Buckley. It's AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. NBC is now.